Let's say a very good morning to Sir John Redwood. Sir John, nice to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Morning, Mike.
Thanks very much indeed. We can, if we may, kick off with Suella Braverman. She's off to the States today to make a speech in which she's going to say that the outmoded sort of refugee acts and various different United Nations conventions need to be changed, need to be updated in order to reflect the way that the world now is. I think she's right about that, isn't she?
Yeah, she's absolutely right. We want to be a generous country and make our contribution for those who are in genuine distress and fleeing violence and bad treatment. But they've got to come by legal routes. The Home Secretary is battling away to try and stop the criminal gangs and all the illegal arrivals, because it's putting far too much pressure on our hotels and our future housing budgets. But she's also right that we can't take millions of economic migrants from all around the world, and the treaties are a bit loose on these matters.
Yes, I think so. And it's obvious, isn't it, that an awful lot of the problems that we're facing is because of a huge surge in the numbers of people moving around the world. I've been saying in the first hour of the show that I've been talking to friends of mine in the States, and there are people now moving through Mexico into the United States of America from sub-Saharan Africa and all sorts of points sort of east, west and north of that. So there's obviously something going on. Mass numbers of people by the millions literally leaving places like Africa and the Indian subcontinent and trying to gain entry to either the United States or Western Europe.
Well, that is the danger, and it's sort of doubly bad for both the country receiving all these people, because it's very difficult to provide the housing, the school places, the hospital assistance and all the other things people need to live to a good standard. But it's even worse in the country they're leaving, because it's very often the most energetic and talented people that decide to become illegal economic migrants. And that is denuding their countries of the talent and the energy that they need to rebuild and to grow their living standards. So we need to assist them and help them in their home country, but we need very clear laws against illegal, want-to-be economic migrants coming in. Yes. And I'm no fan of the low-wage model of giving lots of permits for people to come here to undercut our jobs market. I don't think that works very well either.
No, it really doesn't. And the problem, of course, for many people in this country is that when it was a smaller number coming, they were willing to sort of put up with that being a situation they might not have absolutely wanted to encourage. But now it's a massive problem. It's affecting people's lives on a daily basis. We're seeing, you know, more and more people coming because they know that if they can just get here, there's a pretty good chance they won't ever have to leave. And even the legal migration numbers have gone through the roof as well.
Yes, indeed they have. And I think that's something the government can do more work on immediately, because by definition, these are people coming legally, and it's something we can control. And I think too often we just take what appears to be the easy way out for the employer and say, well, why don't we get a lot of people in who will work hard and won't demand a pay rise? But of course, that's a huge burden on the state, because they need subsidized housing and they need all sorts of public services. And indeed, they need utilities. And we're now finding ourselves very short of electricity, very short of decent school places, particularly short of health capacity. And if you invite 500,000 or 600,000 extra people in every year and they qualify for that, no wonder you're short of the capacity.
Yeah. Although, you know, every time I turn around, there seems to be another crisis somewhere. We're hearing this morning that there could be 2 million operations and procedures in the NHS that have been postponed or cancelled due to the strikes that are still going on. We've got Gatwick Airport today having problems because too many people are off sick, apparently, at the air traffic control. You know, we've also got this study that says that 7.8 days a week, days a year is now what people take off sick. There's a sort of malaise going on, isn't there?
Well, there's a very big productivity problem, because we've had a big fall in productivity in crucial state services and the civil service over the COVID period. And it's urgent that we get back to the productivity levels we had before COVID. And that would seem to be a pretty modest aim. Now, I'm very sympathetic to people who are really ill and they need time off work. And I'm glad we live in a system where they get time off work and pay is reflecting their need. But what we can't have is a society in which some people decide to get ill on a Friday or a Monday because they want a long weekend.
Well, exactly right. And we know, as I'm sure you've noticed, that, Mondays and Fridays, certainly in the centre of London, much quieter because people don't bother coming to work. Thursday night is the new night out. You should see the state of the pubs around London Bridge on a Thursday night. It's what Friday used to look like, but now Friday's quieter.
Yes, indeed. And the main trend behind that, of course, is home working rather than people pretending to be ill.
Yeah.
But
same kind of problem in my
definitely
view.
That, and then of course it kills other people's jobs.
Right.
It's quite difficult to sustain a restaurant or a cafe or a bar or whatever on 3 days a week. You really do need a 5-day-a-week trade.
Yeah, absolutely right. I suppose one place where you might wish that people didn't go to work as much as they do is the Bank of England. You've become aware of a story which is extraordinary to me, and thank goodness you've highlighted it, because I didn't know about this. This is all dating back to 2008 when the bank decided to buy a bunch of bonds, right? And they've sold them at a lower price than they were bought at, costing us a fortune.
Yes, well, I mean, the immediate problem is all the bonds they bought in 2021, well into recovery after COVID. I could understand why they printed a lot of money and made money very cheap in 2020, because if you decide, as the government did, to close down a big chunk of the economy, incomes collapse, people are not allowed to go to work or run their businesses, so you can see the need for an offset. But the Bank of England kept on printing money and making sure that interest rates were very, very low throughout 2021 when there was a recovery underway. That, I think, was bound to be inflationary. Some of us were saying that at the time. And surprise, surprise, it was. So what they're now doing is they're going too far the other way. And all those bonds they bought in 2021 at sky-high prices, they're now selling off at the rock-bottom prices that there is now in the market, seeming to want to increase the losses more. Whereas if they did what the European Central Bank is doing, which made very similar mistakes on the way up to the Bank of England, they're just saying, we'll wait for the bonds to mature. The governments have to repay them at specified dates, and you minimise the losses doing that compared with wading into the market and selling them at very low prices.
And who's making this decision? I mean, why are they doing it earlier rather than later? What's forcing them to do that?
Well, the Bank of England is making the decision, and I read their published statements as anybody can, and they don't make any sense to me. I mean, they both say that it doesn't really make very much impact on life that they sell these things, but nonetheless, it's a good idea to sell them, which seems contradictory. But I don't believe these sales have no impact. They have two very clear impacts. One is that the Treasury, in other words, the British taxpayers, have to send the Bank of England all the money for the losses they make when they sell the bonds. That was the original deal signed off by every chancellor from Alistair Darling onwards. But the other problem is that it means that you are driving the interest rates even higher for the longer dated mortgages, because they read off the interest rates on the bonds. And if the price of the bond goes down, the interest rate goes up. So that is what the Bank of England is doing.
Yeah. They haven't got much right lately, have they? I mean, they've been spending an awful lot of time getting gender-neutral toilets put in, making sure that people have got plenty of diversity training, but actually running and stewarding the economy doesn't seem to be something they're very good at.
No, I think it's extremely sad, and they themselves have admitted, I'm pleased to see recently, that their models and their forecasts were very wrong on inflation, which is why I think they carried on printing money for far too long and boosting the inflation further, because they didn't see the inflation coming. And they promised us that they're going to revise all that, but they're taking a very long time about it. I think it's urgent now. They are meeting regularly to make decisions about what happens to our mortgages and what happens to our economic growth. But they themselves don't have confidence in their inflation forecasts. So I'm not quite sure how you make their decisions until you've got inflation forecasts that you think are robust.
Yes, exactly right. And I mentioned earlier that Rishi Sunak got a bit of a bump in the polls because of his reversal on the net zero decision, which I think was also a good idea. There's lots of other things he could do to get himself, further popular in the stakes of the polls. Much of it I know, profess to agree with us on, that, he should be more conservative. There are things that he could do between now and the next election. I don't think it's by any means a done deal for Sir Keir Starmer at all.
Well, no, of course not. And the people aren't in love with Starmer, and very often Keir Starmer decides to accentuate and make more extreme policies this government following that aren't very popular, which is a very odd way to try and win an election. Yeah. I think there are some very positive conservative ideas that are popular, and we've seen that a modest set of tweaks to the net zero policies to put people into the frame and recognise that people can't afford to make the changes or they're not ready to make some of the changes yet is very sensible. As you know, I've been desperately campaigning to get some tax relief so that we can grow the economy a bit faster.
Yes.
I think the self-employed taxation is very off-putting, and we've lost a lot of self-employed people. We need more of them back. I think the small businesses often get to 85,000 to turnover, and they stop there and they stop trading for a bit because they don't want to go through the VAT threshold. It'd be a very easy change to increase the VAT threshold. You get an immediate boost of extra activity from people who are prepared to do a bit more work because they're not falling foul of the tax system. And I think we still need to do something on energy taxation. Our energy prices are very uncompetitive in this country, and we don't want to end up closing our industry down because the energy is too dear to import the industrial products from elsewhere. That won't save the planet. That will actually increase world CO2 and undermine our jobs and our recovery.
Indeed. And unless you're feeling particularly tired this afternoon, you can watch Ed Davey's speech, and I'm sure that'll put you to sleep forthwith.
I think I've got more productive uses of my time this afternoon. I know that Ed Davey only seems to have one theme, which is that they don't like Conservatives and they want to take Conservative seats. I think you need to engage the public on a much more popular and sensible offer about what you're going to provide for the public, rather than all this self-interest about how they want some MP jobs.
Yes, absolutely right. Sir John, great to talk to you. Thank you very much.